Cuevas. Sydney. Are we good to start? Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being with us today. I'm Rania Mancario, CEO of Crime Stoppers of Houston, and today I'm joined by Senator Paul Bettencourt, Melanie Infinger, the mother of victim Caitlynne Infinger Guajardo, State Representative Dan Huberty, Pastor Willie Davis of the Palm Church, Councilmember Michael Cuevas, Harris County Precinct 3 Commissioner Tom Ramsey, David Cuevas, President of the Harris County Deputies Organization, and Douglas Griffith with the Houston Police Officers Union, and many additional law enforcement partners, community partners, and volunteers, including members of the Crime Stoppers of Houston Board, who are here in support of our comments today. It is critical to begin with the basic reality that crime is changing in Harris County. The victim calls are increasing, and the community concerns are at a boiling point. In an effort to get to solutions, we must agree that improving public safety, while complicated and multifaceted, has to be non-political, nonpartisan, and a common goal for all.
There we go.
There we go. I'll repeat that last sentence because I liked it. In an effort to get to solutions, we must agree that improving public safety, while complicated and multifaceted, has to be non-political, nonpartisan, and a common goal for all. To this end, we've identified certain issues, and I'll start by saying that Crime Stoppers of Houston absolutely and without hesitation agreed and supported misdemeanor bond reform. There was no question there. What we do not support is the current push for felony bond reform that inherently ignores the cries of victims while creating a pathway for career habitual offenders. The natural consequences are expected, and as we are now seeing, public safety is at a higher risk when habitual offenders recognize that shortly following the nuisance of an arrest, they'll be released right back into the community over and over again. This revolving door of the current criminal justice system leaves countless victims in its wake while sending habitual offenders on to more egregious crimes. One must ask, is this the intent of the Constitution? Where is the wisdom and the compassion in allowing this to go on? In late 2019, Crime Stoppers Director of Victim Services and Advocacy, Andy Kahn, noticed a concerning pattern in one area: defendants charged with murder. He noticed many had been released on multiple felony bonds, bond forfeiture, and/or personal bonds. In March of 2020, he began tracking the issue based on data retrieved solely from court records. To date, Andy has sadly uncovered over 90 victims who have been killed or murdered by suspects released on a variety of bonds, including felony and PR bonds from Harris County. At Crime Stoppers, we are supportive, and we are thankful for all our elected officials and the many partners who serve in the criminal justice system. But as we continue to sound the alarm, which we've been doing for over a year, we must also work towards solutions, and that is the goal of today. With that, I'll introduce Andy Kahn.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody being here. Commissioner, come on up. Now you get the spotlight. I'd like to thank everybody here that's taken time from their day to recognize what we have recognized at Crime Stoppers for over a year and basically almost a year and a half right now, that the ramifications of felony bond reform have taken its toll on our citizens. It's created more crime victims than I've seen in my 30 years of working in the criminal justice victim advocacy field. And sadly enough, as Rania alliterated earlier, I have now tracked 90 people who have been killed, murdered by defendants released on multiple felony bonds, PR bonds, bond forfeiture, who were out on bond, had motion to revoke bonds, and nothing was done. Just this past week, 2 different law enforcement agencies, Harris County Sheriff's Department, Houston Police Department officers, were shot at and shot by defendants who've been released on multiple felony bonds. The one yesterday was granted 3 felony bonds in 2020. 2 of them were felon in possession of a weapon, 2 different offenses, and also assault of a pregnant woman. A few days ago, Harris County Sheriff's Deputy Officer, the guy that's now charged in shooting him, was out on 3 bonds, had forfeited their bonds. In front of me here, I have real-life ramifications of felony bond reform. People who I should have never, ever met. And I can tell you, as a victim advocate, talking to surviving family members of homicide, it is a difficult conversation to begin with. But it's even more difficult when you have to tell them, I am so sorry for the loss of your loved one, and the person now charged with the murder of your loved one, quite frankly, from our perspective, should have never, ever been on the streets because he'd been released repeatedly on bonds, whether they be personal recognizance bonds or multiple felony bonds. Enough is enough. The time to end this has to start now, and with that, we appreciate Senator Bettencourt. We appreciate all our elected officials here today. We appreciate our law enforcement recognizing that it is a problem. And public safety should be and has to be a nonpartisan issue. That's how it needs to be. The people in Harris County need help. And since nothing has happened locally, we're going to have to seek legislation statewide to address this issue. And shame on us if we don't do anything about this and continue to allow this to fester, because that list is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So public safety, that's what Crime Stoppers is here. The guise of criminal justice reform and felony bond reform, like I stated, has taken an undue toll on our crime rates, and a revolving door at the courthouse has played a major role in this. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Yes, COVID has played a role too, but make no mistake about it, when you continually release the same defendants time and time again, who pretty much have said, I'm going to commit crimes time and time again, then the buck has to stop somewhere. With that, I'm going to introduce Melanie Infinger. Like many up here, I should have never ever had to meet Melanie. And if it wasn't for a defendant released on multiple PR bonds within days apart, we would have never met. But she is here to tell you why this law is being sponsored, why we're calling it Caitlynne's Law, and I'm just going to let her share a little bit of her story and her journey. Melanie?
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone, for your support and for allowing me this opportunity to speak of my beautiful daughter, Caitlynne, and this is her sister, Madison, her mini-me, as I like to say, her look-alike, and the pictures are of her daughter, Alexis, who was 9 months old whenever she was murdered. She's now 2, and with me. And then this is my beautiful daughter, Caitlynne, that was brutally murdered by her husband, Alex Gajardo, that was out not just on one PR bond. He was out on multiple PR bonds. When he murdered her, he was already due to be in court. He hadn't went to court yet for a DWI and a hit and run. This was his second DWIs in his 22 years of life. Caitlynne had him arrested on the Wednesday before she was murdered for assault, for assaulting her. He was arrested, and he had also killed her cat. The police had walked into, and the cat was tortured in a bag of bleach. So he was not just a habitual, he was an habitual offender. He was violent. He was a cat killer. And we had been begging Caitlynne to press charges. As a mother, your biggest fear is, my most anxiety was knowing that she was in a very bad domestically abusive relationship. And we begged her to press charges. We begged her. And then she finally did. And that Wednesday morning when she called me and told me he was arrested, I was so proud of her. She was so strong, and she did exactly what we had been wanting her to do. She was being protected, or so we thought. He was in jail where he needed to be. And then it was just a few days later, on Saturday, August 3rd, that I got a phone call from a medical examiner that she was stabbed to death. She was 17 weeks pregnant. And obviously, your world stops. You go numb. The pain is unimaginable. She was not just my daughter, she was my best friend. And she had just started over. She had left Alex. She had his parents come get everything out of the apartment. It was over. I was so proud of her. She had never looked more beautiful than she did Saturday morning. She was free. And she, when I found out that she had been murdered after the numbness and the shock and the denial and the sadness and the pain, I just was angry because I wanted to know who bonded him out. Like, who bonded him out? Who would let out a cat killer? Who would let out someone that, assaults their wife? I just assumed it was someone he knew. I assumed it was a family member, a friend. And it wasn't until the next day on August 4th when I saw the Pasadena Police Chief Josh Bruger on TV explaining their PR system and that he was let out on not a bond, but a PR bond for free, a slap on the hand. I could not even believe what I was hearing. I was livid. I was angry, and I knew that my daughter's death was preventable. And I knew if the rest of my days I was going to fight to make sure a change was made in her name, that she would be a catalyst to make sure that this does not happen to anyone else. These PR bonds are being handed out like popcorn. These criminals are laughing at Harris County in our justice system. It has to stop. Criminals who are violent belong behind bars. They need to be held accountable. This law is going to bring accountability back into a very broken system. And the numbers are rising. Sadly, I can relate to now, 100 people that are like us that have lost family members. The pain never goes away. I will always have a hole in my heart. And I just thank y'all again, and I pray for change, and that Caitlynne's story will forever, make a change in our laws, and that these violent criminals do not continue to get these consistent, back-to-back PR bonds. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. This time I'd also like to recognize members of Parents of Murdered Children and surviving family members of homicide that are also present here as well. Of the 91 victims who've been killed by defendants released on multiple felony bonds and PR bonds, 11 were domestic violence and 3 were unborn children. And with that in mind, I'm going to introduce Senator Paul Bettencourt, who is leading the charge amongst our Harris County delegation, recognizing that we do have a problem, and has now initiated legislation that we are now calling Caitlynne's Law.
Thank you, Andy. Give me a second. America is the land of second chances. It is not the land of third and fourth and fifth chances, when those chances end up injuring or killing a fellow citizen or a police officer. This situation has to stop. And while I'm filing a bill today, it's Senate Bill 532, I'm calling on the judges of Harris County to stop this today. The magistrates that are letting people out on multiple PR bonds and low dollar felony bonds are making a mistake. because there's 90 other tragedies besides Caitlynne's. And that's just the murder victims that we know about, not all the other associated crime. And mercifully, the officers that have been wounded lately are surviving. But that's not always the case. So what is the solution? The solution is Senate Bill 532. And this bill, we would have had it up here on both screens, but there was a problem with the computer giving you all feedback. So we'll bring it up at the end. It simply does two things. It says that if you've got a PR bond already and you've got a couple other felony counts, you can't get another one. Because Melanie's right. We're passing these things out like popcorn at the courthouse. And it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen this way. Now, the other thing this bill does is that after 3 felony charges, your next minimum bond level is $10,000. Now, that sounds like a lot. It really isn't in the way the bond system works. I'll let Councilmember Cuevas talk about that and the law enforcement people. But you have to set some minimum, because we've had people let out on $50 felony bonds, $100 felony bonds, and they have committed capital murder, and it has to stop. Now, I want to quote from the district attorney, Kim Ogg. Violent offenders who commit more crimes while on bail should not be repeatedly released to prey upon innocent people. Let me say it again. It's common sense. Violent offenders who commit more crimes while on bail should not be repeatedly released to prey on innocent people. So says District Attorney Kim Ogg. And because too many of our citizens have been affected by this. And I expect this is a beginning point of a very larger conversation that's going to occur. I expect to hear something. I have no idea what, but I suspect that it will be in potentially the State of the State address. I've talked to both chairmen of both the Senate committees, Chairman Whitmire and Chairman Huffman, who's released. Chairman Huffman's got a press release out about an omnibus bill. And I've talked to other members of the delegation. And I'm happy that there are many already supporting it. A small partial list is Tom Oliverson, Jim Murphy, Valerie Swanson, Sam Harless. I know I'm going to miss some people. Dan, help me. Okay. Right, Mike Schofield, Dennis Paul, because we know it's a problem that has to have a resolution. Now, this started for me in the summer when we started communication with Andy, because we saw this tremendous spike, and both Doug and David saw the same thing on the law enforcement numbers. But people started crying out for help, because what are we going to do about it? Well, this is one Aggie Catholic senator that's going to say it's time for the entire community to come together. I don't care what you look like, where you sleep, who you work for, what political party you're with. We need everybody to fix this problem, because it can't continue anymore. And so this is just my first attempt to get into the breach and to stop it. And I'm glad to have so much support from Commissioner Ramsey and other elected officials. Councilmember Kubash, I think Councilmember Knox is sending in a statement as we speak, to Mayor Bell and other people in the community. It's important. Now, I'm going to introduce Willie shortly, okay, because I think it's important for everybody to understand this is really a fundamental bedrock issue with the community. And faith means a lot. And we need to have faith in each other. We need to make sure we're making the right decision. And it starts with those judges at the courthouse. It's going to take a long time to get a bill passed, and it may not be the bill that is filed. But the spirit of Caitlynne will always exist, okay? Because her death and the death of her unborn child and the 90 other people that have died, okay, is the spirit that propels us. And we're not going to stop, because we are going to get this done. I don't care what bill passes. I don't care who carries it. I don't care what any of what it looks like, as long as it does the right thing. Because that's what we're standing up for today, is the right thing. Judges, stop releasing these people. It's not the right thing to release people on multiple PR bonds and low felony bonds. It's killing people in the community. Stop it. Now, before I get to Pastor Willie, I do want to bring up my other colleague from the legislature, Dan Huberty, for a couple comments.
Oh, good morning. Obviously, we're very sorry about your loss, but, you know, I want to thank the senator for taking the lead on this. You know, throughout the summer, we've filed multiple briefs and things of that nature when we heard that there was a big push to just start letting people out of jail. They were concerned about COVID, you know, and, you know, we've talked about this a lot. You know, the courts really aren't open, folks. They got a backlog of 100,000s of cases, and they're just letting people out. And as a result, this is what happens, right? So two things is stop what you're doing, number one, and number two, go back to work and start adjudicating these criminals and putting them where they belong, in jail. And it's important for us to be able to take a stand and to do this. And if the current administration or the current judges won't do it, then that's what we exist for. That's what the legislature exists for. And we're going to solve this problem. We're going to get this passed. As you know, it's got to pass in the Senate. It's got to pass in the House. It's going to have tremendous support, I believe, in both bodies as we proceed through this process to get it done. But you know, we don't ever traditionally don't like to come in and you know, start stepping on people's toes and doing it. But if you're not going to do your job, then by God, we're going to do it for you. And so I just want to thank the senator for all the work and everything that you're doing. It means a lot, and this will be something that will be important for all the people that have suffered domestic abuse and violence, and obviously now we're having these murders. And it sickens me that we have situations where people are coming out and certainly obviously getting worried, but also attacking our police officers and our sheriffs. That's got to stop. You know, that has got to stop. And I'm tired of what's happening in this country. I'm tired of what people are vilifying police officers for doing their jobs. And so, you know, part of our responsibility as we go forward and we go do this is that we want to make sure that the right reforms are in place, certainly, but also the people that are bad actors and the people that are the criminals are going to pay, and they're going to go to jail, and they're going to go to jail for a long time. So, Senator, thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. That was Representative Dan Huberty. I also want to thank people in the audience because it's been a lot of the reporting that you've done. Caitlynne's story came to me because of Randy Wallace, who first broadcast it, and it was such a tragedy that the good news is that her name's on Senate Bill 532, and that means she's part of the record of the session up no matter what happens from here. And I mentioned Pastor Willie Davis because I'd like to have Pastor Willie Davis come up from the Palm Church. Pastor Davis has been speaking out on these issues all the way to Chicago, where he's been on radio recently. And as Representative Huberty said, 8 of us, plus myself, the senator, have been very active on amicus briefs on these issues. But I saw Pastor Davis's eloquent remarks, and I wanted to invite him today, along with Andy, because we know that your message needs to be heard.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First and foremost, let me say that I am grateful to Paul for inviting me, Senator Bettencourt, and Andy. And recently, as he just spoke, recently I was invited by Commissioner Ramsey to participate in a panel regarding this issue. And because I was invited because I spoke out against it. I'm a native Houstonian. I've been in this city all my life. I grew up in 3rd Ward, Texas. This is my home. This is where I was born and raised. This is a city I love, and I've loved and supported this city all my life, even from the time I left to go serve in the United States Army and the Special Forces, and I still do it today. And unfortunately, it's becoming very frustrating that we are ignoring a serious crisis. This is not just a crisis regarding just pandemics. This is a crisis that's affecting our entire city, and it needs to stop. And I want to commend Paul, you for doing this, and Mr. Hubert, and I want to thank Andy and Ramsey and for all of this. This is not a Democrat Republican, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope to make that very clear, because so often we get caught up And unfortunately, the climate of what we're going through today, and it's very sickening. I served almost 4 years as a pastor in 2 major cities, Houston and Chicago. And let me just make a statement to what you see to the left of me with these ladies. I lived in it, I pastored in it in the South Side. I pastored a young lady whose family got wiped out. Jennifer Hudson, who was a member of the church, attended the church that I pastored, it happened within a year of my pastoring. And you could probably tell by my passion that how I feel about it, and I want it to be very clear. Because this, ladies and gentlemen, is serious. Every year in Chicago, they would have a banquet, and the room would be 3 times the size of this, with tables of mothers and fathers sitting, whose sons and daughters have been killed by criminals. And right now, if you go on the streets of Chicago, Paul, if you interview anybody about the issue in Chicago, you know what they're going to tell you? They get bonded out. They walk out the door. The very thing that's happening in Chicago is happening here. And I got a phone call. I shared this with Commissioner Tom Ramsey, what Paul was mentioning about. When I spoke out against this in November, within 5 days, I had been notified by 5 different radio stations. And matter of fact, WVON of Chicago called me. Said, Pastor Davis, we knew you were here, and we heard you were back in Houston, and we heard where you said Houston is turning to Chicago, and we had to interview you. The city that is known for this reached out to me. The brothers and sisters, Paul couldn't have been overly passionate about this issue. And let me just say this, and I'll move on, Paul. You know, I said this to my Commissioner Ramsey. Crime does not discriminate, and I hope we get this. I hope we all understand this to our administration in this city and council, and I expressed it to Cuevas. I talked about this a year ago in 2019. I sloganed, let's keep Houston safe, and people ignored me. This president administration ignored me. But let me just say this to you. This came out of the Houston Chronicle that out of the 28 largest cities in America, Houston is the top city for the killings of young black youths. 139%. And the crime increased over 10 years. But what do we hear? Oh, it's because of the pandemic. No, it is not. No, it is not. Crime doesn't discriminate, but it absolutely segregates. And we better keep that in mind. Thank you.
Amen, Pastor Davis. With that, Councilmember Kubosh, and then we'll have Commissioner Tom Ramsey.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for this opportunity to speak in favor of any type of bail reform that will reduce crime in Houston and prevent this family and others from this horrible acts of violence against them. There's 2 reasons why a person needs to post a bond. One is to behave and to be in court. And we know that those who are getting these free bonds aren't appearing in court. And so consequently, this is what the result is. And as a bondsman, you make sure that as much as possible, you track the person, you keep in touch with them, and you do everything you can to prevent them from committing more crimes. The first duty of government is to protect its citizens. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I will support this bill. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Michael. Commissioner Tom Ramsey, Precinct 3, Harris County.
We grieve for Caitlynne and her family. This simply is not right. Thank you, Senator, for putting the bill together. Thank you, Mr. Representative, for being a part of that. Thank you, the Harris County deputies. Thank you, Pastor Davis. And thank you, Crime Stoppers. You talk about it. when nobody else wants to talk about it. This isn't comfortable. This isn't easy. But we can do it. This shouldn't be a issue of Democrat or Republican. This should be 100% supported by any elected official in Austin. And for you not to do that, then you don't care about safe neighborhoods. When people ask me, why you keep talking about safe neighborhoods? You should be talking about infrastructure. I'll talk about infrastructure, but the number one problem in Harris County is crime. In Precinct 3, rapes are up 150%. Domestic violence crime is up 77%. Homicides are up 41%. What else am I going to talk about? Everybody should be safe when they go home at night. And we talk all this rhetoric and we talk all the political talking points, but I'm more concerned about the single mom with 2 babies in Acres home tonight that's going to go to bed afraid. And that just simply is not right, and we're going to do something about it, whether it's on the county level, whether it's on the city level, whether it's on the constable level, or whether it's on the state level. We're not going to forget Caitlynne. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Andy, come up here because I think we should both introduce this group, okay? Yep. Law enforcement is so critical, Andy, and every day they're out fighting, and every day they're putting people in detention, and sadly, many of them are coming right back out. And when in the same week, we've had 2 people shot within both departments, it's a time for action. So I was proud when Ray Hunt, Doug Griffin, and also David Cuevas joined us today, because they're on the front line, and they're the ones that have to take the quite frankly, the collateral damage from this very bad public policy system that is developed at the Harris County Courthouse. And
I'd like to thank all the Harris County deputies, Houston Police Department, all our law enforcement agencies, and particularly both the unions that are present here today. They've been sounding the alarm just as we have in Crime Stoppers. Sadly, this is nothing new for them, but this is where things have got to end. This is where the buck has to stop. And with that, I'm going to ask David Cuevas from the Sheriff's Union to come on up here.
Thank you, Andy. I'd like to thank Crime Stoppers for hosting this, and our condolences go out to you and your family. Senator Bettencourt, thank you very much for championing this bill that we wholeheartedly support. And this legislation that's coming forth is what I'm calling its vaccine to this PR bond epidemic. It limits our magistrates and it reduces their authority, which is much needed. We support and stand in unison for this bill. But we also can't forget about our district judges. They are an authority, just like our magistrates, and they wear a black robe, symbolizing through tradition and the colonial times of authority, impartial judgment, and upholding the rule of law and constitution. But here in Harris County, they've soiled their robes. They have allowed repeat offenders and felons out on PR bonds. They have created a safe haven for criminals. Harris County is a sanctuary for criminals, robbers, murderers, and thieves. Now they will be looked at as the Grim Reaper in their black robes. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. Here recently, one of our deputies was shot. I have spoken with them, and the person who shot him was out on bond. The same person robbed his mama and barricaded himself in the house, but yet he was out on bond. Our deputy is in great spirits. He's anxious to get back to work. He is excited and motivated, but he said something very intriguing. He said he is glad that he's the one that got shot and not an innocent victim, a child, a mother, or a grandmother. Harris County is a sanctuary again for these criminals, and it has to stop. These judges have totally disregarded public safety, and it's a shame. But today, our organization and everybody up here stands with you, Senator Bettencourt, and all legislatures to make sure that this bill gets passed and continue to fight the good fight. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I'm going to ask Doug Griffith to come up, President of the Houston Police Officers Association.
Yeah, let me first say my condolences to all the families here. Ma'am, I can't even start to imagine the pain that you guys have went through. That's so avoidable. It really is. We take a look around this city and we see the demise of the justice system here, and it's really sickening to me. We appreciate Senator Bettencourt and all those legislators that are helping us out with seeing the issue that we have here and trying to address it. We should never have to worry about the legislature doing that. They should be handling that on their own. The problem is the judges in Harris County have changed their tactic. You'll see them on Facebook and Twitter. They want to be social justice warriors. Well, I'm sorry. You have one job, and that's to protect the citizens of Harris County, and you've all failed in that. I can promise you, I'm sitting over here seeing former Judge Jackson. That never would have happened in her courtroom. We got to get serious about crime in Harris County. We got to start looking at the victims, because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's about the victims, and it's about the citizens of Harris County being victimized by people on multiple bonds. There's absolutely no excuse for that. Our last two officer-involved shootings that we've had, both involved people that shot at our officers first. All of them out on PR bonds. It emboldens them to go out there and commit more crimes and be even more violent. We've got to put a stop to it. Thank you to our legislators for recognizing that, and thank you to Andy for stepping up and being the one to put this together. He's done a phenomenal job over here, and I look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you.
Ray, if you want to add a couple comments. Yeah, just a brief comment. I don't want anybody thinking that this is just the unions that are supporting this. If you've listened to Chief Art Acevedo for the last 2 years, he's been tweeting about this and talking about how these judges need to be held accountable. So don't think that just because they're not standing here that they don't support this bill filed by Senator Bettencourt. This isn't just a union. This isn't Democrats. This isn't Republicans. This should be all of Houston, Texas, and Harris County. And we thank you, Representative Huberty, and everybody who's standing up for right and standing up for the victims and not for the criminals who are out multiple times on PR bonds. When you hear somebody get a $10,000 PR bond, don't be misled. They're not putting up $10,000. That means they're getting out free of charge, and it just means if you don't show up, you could be charged $10,000. Well, guess how many have been charged money for not showing up? 0. Not one dime on a PR bond has been collected in Harris County since this crap has started. So don't be misled by the rhetoric of those folks who are saying, we're tough, we gave them a $20,000 PR bond. No, you didn't. You gave them a free pass. And the time is now to stop. And thank you, Senator Bettencourt, for letting us be here.
Ray, I got to get you an amen on that, because that's the case. Tamara Bell, Super Neighborhood, what's your point? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes.
Clock starts now.
Good morning, everyone. First off, I want to thank Crime Stoppers very much for holding this press conference. I want to thank Andy Kahn for his many, many years of work. And I want to tell you all right now, they made us all take rapid COVID tests. So don't be freaking out when you see them taking out their masks. We've all been tested and we all passed. Now, let me tell you why I came here. I have been on a show called What's Your Point for many years, and I've been talking about crime. But let me tell y'all what's going on now. This is not about crime, because crime has been happening for decades. It's the repercussions of crime that are not occurring, because for everything there is a cause and effect. And like Pastor said, crime doesn't discriminate, but it does disseminate, because you may see crime on the north side and say, oh, pity them. Next thing you know, it's on the south side, east side, west side. Wall Street Journal did a 50 cities on the most crime. Chicago was 31. Houston was 19. Okay, now, I know we're trying to be the most populous and to get in that third slot, but that's not the way to do it. when you allow people to get away with crimes. And let me tell you, these judges have told people that they're doing this because they're afraid. They don't want somebody to run against them, and they're afraid of repercussions from somebody that sit around that horseshoe at Harris County who has a bodyguard. Well, hell, I can't afford a bodyguard. I can't. I need HPD, the constables, and everybody else in law enforcement to protect me. But I shouldn't be afraid to go to the store. And my multiple senior neighbors who are afraid when they hear these stories of how they've been snatched and robbed, and the person is out the next day. Even advocates against sexual trafficking said that the prostitutes are afraid to tell on the pimps because they get out and then beat them worse. There's something that has to be done. So I love what the gentleman said. This is a vaccine. Everybody talk about the vaccines for COVID. We need a vaccine for this because they won't do their jobs. And let me tell you, come on, mama. Come here, little mama. Come over here. Here you are. Tell them who you have a picture of. Tell them.
I wasn't expecting to speak, but this is my brother, Patrick. It was just the two of us. We're 16 years apart. He just got killed in September, 4 days after his 46th birthday, by a person that I found out that was let out on 3 different bonds for violent crime, and he escalated to murder. And when I heard this this happened to my brother, and heard about this offender's history, I was angry. I knew then, in that moment, something needed to be done. I had no idea that was something already in the works being done, so I was glad to be a part of this, and I'll stand up, and everybody needs to vote for this. Like they said, this is everybody's problem. Amen. I'm a native Houstonian, and I never seen it so bad. And I am afraid for my own safety now, and all my life of living here in Houston. So I just hope that everybody gets together and support this bill in honor of all the victims, and to save the future victims if we don't do anything about this.
Amen. Amen. And I wanted her to come up because years ago I lost my little brother to violent crime on his birthday. Within seconds after my mother hung up a payphone singing happy birthday to him. So let me tell you, this hurts, and it hurts for years. True, time does soften wounds, but it never takes them away. Why should we get more victims and look at the victims as nothing but a consequence instead of looking at the actions of the criminals and punishment for them? So you all know this is a judicial issue that is being put on us, the public, so y'all need to look at it. Because he's right. This ain't about being a Democrat or Republican when it comes to crimes. That's true. But when it comes to consequences for your actions, you have to look at the individuals who are doing this. I'm telling you, because if you start posting when the judges do this, that'll make them stop. Thank you.
Rita Costa, age 43, shot and killed by Jesus Gallegos, out on 5 bonds, 2 felony PR bonds in 1 year. Rosalie Cook, 80 years old, walking from Meyerland from a Walgreens, stabbed to death by a guy who'd been arrested 60 times and out on multiple PR bonds. I could go on and on and on and on. And like David said, we need a vaccine because we do have what I call a Harris County bond pandemic. And we are in the midst of it, and people are dying because of what's happening out there. This time I'd like to ask our CEO, Rania Mancarius, to come out and close this, and we appreciate everybody being here. And to all the families who have lost loved ones as a result of PR and multiple felony bonds, as I told all of you, we're going to do something about it. You're going to be a catalyst for change.
Just want to thank everybody and also just reiterate the points that Crime Stoppers is about solutions. It makes me crazy when people turn this political, and if you just look at the victims, it's just shame on you. In an effort to focus on solutions, we've done many things. One, Andy Kahn is the best of the best, and he's been chosen to spearhead this over a year ago. We're working with our law enforcement partners. We're working with the community. We're understanding the many different layers of this conversation and not ignoring any of them. And then we've had the good fortune of bringing on somebody to our team whose first day is today, Judge Maria Jackson. We're so pleased to have her. Her focus will be helping us navigate the judicial system and a means of creating partnerships and solutions. Judge Jackson, we're so thrilled to have you with us. We'll let you close it out. And for any questions, can follow up.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I resigned September 30th, 2019 as the longest serving felony court judge in Harris County because I didn't like the way that bail reform was going. The original intent was to prevent injustice. But when you see so many killings and it's going in the opposite direction, that is injustice. So now I'm super excited about being here with Crime Stoppers because we all deserve to be safe in our community. As you can see, this is not a political issue. It's not a black, white, or racial issue. This is about us being safe in our community. So I stand with you, Senator Bettencourt, and all of the other elected officials and the community leaders out here that are in this room and that are not in this room, because we need to take Harris County back and go in the right direction, being safe. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take questions.
You all are talking about all the negative things about this. Don't you think that, judges think this is right? I've been trying to get judges to talk about this forever now. Don't you think judges should explain why they think it's a good idea without, we're not asking them to go into specifics of anybody's individual case. They can't do that. But shouldn't they do what you're doing if they think this is such a good idea? Say why they want to do it?
Randy, the whole purpose of Senate Bill 532 is to spark the community debate. And I've called on them clearly today to stop what they're doing, and I would expect them to have an answer. I'm not trying to ask about individual cases, okay? But Tamara summed it up right. This is an everywhere problem with everybody, okay? And so they should, at this point in time. This is a public discourse. I don't believe this is stopped by judicial canon, quite frankly, because it's about a policy, you know, that's hurting the community. Other questions? Thank you. Yes, sir.
As citizens of Houston, is there any way that we can get a list of the judges and the magistrates that are doing all this and shame them?
It's all of them.
Okay, well, there's already information out on on Crime Stoppers about it, and quite frankly, I was very happy when I saw a Channel 2 news story and popped the name of the judge, because it's time for this to stop, and you know, and they have to be accountable for these actions, okay, and because I'm not pulling any punches on it, and I don't think Crime Stoppers is, because we're way past the time of not doing anything about it. We have to have a public debate, and if they're going to continue this practice, they better be able to explain why, because I do not believe that the citizens of Harris County, I don't care where they live, whether they're black, brown, white, some other color, I don't care who they sleep with, nobody wants this to continue. Well, look, obviously, at this point in time, all the misdemeanor people need to be out of the jail as soon as possible if they're not. I think, I can't speak for District Attorney Ogg, but I believe she identified 60 people that could be moved out. I have spoken with Nathan Hecht, okay, the Supreme Court Justice, and to tell him what I was doing with this bill, and also to visit with him about the fact that the courts need to get open as soon as possible, because I can't, I can only express an opinion, but they can do something about it. And I can't, I'm not going to say what the discussion was, but I've called and done what I can as a senator to try to push this problem, because you're right, it's multifaceted. But right now, the judges have to stop this. I don't want to get to 100 for it to stop. It needs to stop at 91, because that's 91 families that are irrevocably shattered by double stacked PR bonds and low dollar felony bonds. And I'll show you the bill when we be able to get the computer back up so you can see it, and the links on it. Randy?
Do you think it could be stiffer, like $10,000 for the first PR violation and then no bond after the second?
Randy, we spent a lot of time looking at what I would call the formula, because I remember as the numbers guy. And part of it is that we want to get consensus in the community, okay? And what was abhorrent to me was seeing reports from Fox, Channel 2, you know, all these places where somebody's let out on $50 bonds, right, Andy? $100 bonds. Tell me, law enforcement? You know, $1 bonds, okay? And I'm just trying to get the number up to something that's even measurable, okay? Because as what's been said here, I think, and Ray Hunt said it the best, if you don't enforce the PR bond, it doesn't matter whether it's 20,000 or $1, because nobody ever pays. Okay, so this is a starting point, and I tell you this, I really want to thank District Attorney Kim Ogg for releasing this statement, because she's recognizing the obvious, just like Tamara said. This is an everywhere problem, and everybody's affected. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming. Or Andy, you can thank everybody for coming. Okay, so that's right.
I'd like to personally thank Randy Wallace for coming and for getting up early today. And with that,
we'll be around for questions.
thanks everybody. Appreciate you.